Welcome to Lyme Time. I'm Allie from the Tick Chicks. We are all more than Lyme disease and chronic illness, and together we stand with you to overcome and rise. I'll bring you closer to the experts in cutting-edge treatments and even a few unexpected ways of healing. I'll ask the questions you want answers to regarding Lyme disease and successful ways of getting you closer to 100%. We are in this together and will not be defined by Lyme. Well, warriors, today I have a very, very special guest, and I'm excited to announce her being on the show. It's Adena Sampson, and I want to tell you a little bit about her before we get going. Adena is the founder of Out Loud Productions and the Unbreakable Spirit Movement, a breakthrough coach, inspirational speaker, singer, songwriter, and best-selling author. And that is probably just the tip of the iceberg. Having overcome the insurmountable, Adena leads by example, teaching people how to turn challenges into victories and inspiring them to live a more authentic, courageous, and passionate life. A gifted speaker, MC, narrator, and presenter, from workshops and seminars, voiceovers and jingles to commercials and broadcasting, Adena has offered extraordinary customer service and representation for many professional associations, including a number of Fortune 500 companies. An entrepreneur at heart, Adena has an extensive background in event management, media, marketing, and sales, and has built and trained solid teams. Adena made her mark in the network marketing industry as a high-performance leader with an online technology company, ranking in the top 40 of 20,000, and was responsible for the growth and expansion of over 500 affiliates. As an accomplished singer, songwriter, guitarist, and producer, Adena has graced the stage across the globe and has had the opportunity to open up for Patti LaBelle, Wayne Newton, one of my favorites, Jim Brickman, Nils Lofgren, and more. A born traveler with a love for adventure and a passion for life, a woman that sings from her soul with a gritty, raw power and passion rarely heard today. No matter what the medium is, Adena, with her vibrant energy, radiant smile, and engaging sense of humor, is sure to inspire and add color to your event and also to your lives, as we will talk about her book and go into her 9 principles for navigating life's twists and turns. And anybody with Lyme disease or chronic illness can surely relate to that. Welcome, Adena.
Oh, Allie, thank you so much for having me. It is such an honor to be here. And wow, what an introduction.
Well, you've done a lot, and it really makes me reflect on the fact that I say this over and over again. People that are faced with Lyme disease and some chronic illnesses are often the most outgoing, successful, adventurous, and life-loving individuals that I have ever met. And I think it's because of that sense of adventure. You know, we're out hiking and camping and exploring the world. And then we trip across something like Lyme disease or a tick bite or tick-borne illness, and suddenly the life as we knew it comes to a crashing halt. And it's debilitating. It is not something we are used to as type A personalities. And we'll get more into that as we go along. And I definitely want to talk about your 9 principles in your book. So the title of the book for everybody out there is called The Road Back to Me, 9 Principles for Navigating Life's Twists and Turns. And so Adena, can you just go into your journey and how this all sort of began for you, and tell us what that was like for you?
Well, how much time do we have, Allie? Okay, so, again, we all have our own journeys, our own stories, and they develop, again, as we go very unexpectedly. Life rarely goes as we expect it to, right? Hence part of the excitement, and hence part of the pain and the strife and the struggle. So it began long ago for me, like so many others. And what I mean by that is, I'll tell you definitely a little bit more about the Lyme aspect and go into that. But really, it starts from just growing up, right? And what we're taught and told, and our mindset and the beliefs that we unfortunately, and fortunately, but unfortunately, our beliefs and a lot of our coping mechanisms that end up playing out later on in our adulthood, right? A lot of the trauma that we've been through, even prior to, for example, dealing with a disease like Lyme disease, right? How does that happen initially? Sure, it happens from tick bites, right? We know that, not the only way, right? And of course, we're here trying to spread that message that there's many other factors involved. But how does that happen? A lot of times this is multifaceted. It's a domino effect, right? It's you're going through stress, you're going through a breakup, which is what happened to me. So back in, gosh, 2008 is when it really all started to come to a head. Of course, I had been really sick as a child. I caught everything that was going around, right? I got two younger sisters, grateful, thankful, blessed. My parents came from broken homes. They gave us what they never had. And yet at the same time, as grateful as I am, none of us, ended up coming out unscathed. Let's just say that. So for me, very sensitive as a young individual, right? Picking up on all the nuances of mom, dad, the relationship there. And I say this because my journey wasn't, like I said, just because I got sick with Lyme, but how did I end up there? And then my healing from that place. Truly, it's been a domino effect of severe chronic illness, right? Lyme disease and its co-infections, its viral co-infections, as well as, again, excruciating heartbreak, how that affected all my relationships. Again, the codependency, I didn't realize that I was entertaining and participating in, right, unconsciously. And then, of course, the financial devastation that came with that. Those who are listening to this podcast who are suffering with whether that be Lyme disease or chronic illness in any way, shape, or form. Again, we've got lupus, MS, what we deem or they deem the medical industry to still be mystery illnesses. It's all irrelevant because it's one and the same. And you now are seeing that with this COVID long haulers, right? You're seeing the same thing of the cytokine storm, the inflammatory response that so many of us have suffered with for so long and have yet to get really the full support that we need. Again, grateful for the medical community and how far it's come, what they've done so far. And yet, with COVID that's now come along, that's come along with its own baggage, its own fears for those of us who have suffered for so long, right? And then at the same time, from a very hopeful perspective, I'm so happy that we now have an awareness or at least more medical expertise headed in the right direction to support so many of us that have been suffering, for this long. So for me, my journey has been one of like I asked you how long your journey was, it's been 13 years now.
Okay.
13 years of fighting for my life. And I do not say that lightly.
So you were going through a personal transition, and then is that about the same time that this chronic illness popped up for you?
Exactly. Great question, because so many of these things are triggers. So I went through a breakup at the time when I got so sick. Now, originally, of course, when I got sick, we had no idea. I had no idea that it was Lyme. I was misdiagnosed for 5 years. So it wasn't until 2008 when we first had the financial crisis as well. So it was twofold. I had, business I had built up, doing very, very well, that I'm very successful with, that you had mentioned, partly in my bio, came to a screeching halt like so many others. So we're going, okay, now what? And then I've got this relationship, the love of my life at the time, right? That is just not well. It's not right. And I end up sick in the hospital, come home with a PICC line, right? Because they thought that I had, and I may have had MRSA.
Okay.
I end up with an infection in my right breast tissue. It scared the bejeebies out of me, full fever, all the symptoms, and nobody knew what it was. We didn't know what we were dealing with. It was scary. And I came home and I had a PICC line in my arm, and I realized we had a bit of an altercation, me and my partner. And I knew in that moment, I said, Adena, at this point, you have to choose. If you're going to choose anyone, you have to choose you, which I've never been the best at, right? Prior to that, you have to choose you. You give and you give and you give. But right now, it's between life and death. Is this worth it? Like, what are you willing to do right now? Because at this moment in time, I knew something was wrong, but I also knew it was really wrong. It was like, I'm not going to make it if I don't really make a different choice here. So that's how it started.
Mm. Okay. And then how did you get from that moment to, writing a book and
Yeah.
and kind of taking a shift from I'm imagining it was a shift from your music and production and all of that you had going on business wise and turning that into these 9 principles that you live by.
Again, do my best to keep it short and sweet, not always easy. And I'm used to telling a lot of my story here, base it mainly on, the mindset perspective, but it's one and the same. This is my story. I start off in the book by telling my story so that others can get the support that they need, right? The resources they need. And then we go into what has saved my life, which is really a big part of what I had to change within me and my mindset. Again, we've heard it before. I heard it before. It wasn't that I wasn't on the journey, I was. And we learn as we go when the right time is. And when we're not well, and we are not ourselves, and we can't see the forest, through the trees, it's a lot easier said than done. It's not, oh, just be positive. I'm not about that, even though I know it's important. I'm about understanding the humanness of where we've been, accepting that, and then going, okay, how can we turn adversity into opportunity? So to answer your question twofold, when I say it's been a 13-year journey, it wasn't until 2 years ago when COVID hit, when I thought I had missed my boat by that time, that everything started turning around in my life and I started feeling good enough to even be present with you. Now, you know from your own journey what that does, what Lyme disease does to the our cognitive ability, okay, how that affects us. Music is actually what saved my life. So when I was not well, and again, there's only so many years I can, botch up here, but I was traveling during this time. I never had a steady home after the 2008 crash, and then myself getting sick. It was, put it this way, I was living in Hawaii at the time, came home at the time to mom and dad. How old was I? 30 years old, 30 something years old, with my head down, kind of going, I don't know what's happening. Something's not right, what that feels like. So that's the very beginning of the journey, right? And then realizing, okay, I am not my identity, meaning what it is I do for a living does not deem who it is I am, right?
Mm.
And so there's a lot of pieces that, aside from the physical ailments, which is full fevers, which is migraines, which is full body aches, which is, again, not being able to do the work I used to do, where I couldn't communicate, I couldn't continue. There was nothing left to do. Right. So fast forward, music ended up saving my life. I was sleeping all day, could not do, again, my sales, my marketing, my coaching. I couldn't do any of that.
Mhm.
And I had to take a step back. And here I am then saying, okay, I'm going to go out and I'm going to perform and serve. And I'm telling you, the only time that I wasn't in pain was the 3 to 4 hours, 2, 3, 4 hours that I was on stage singing and playing. It was like I was in an altered state, Allie. Truly, I
Uh-huh.
was. And it was, again, the only way out is through is a big part of what I believe, that, my energy, my gifts come through me.
Mm.
Right. And so even though I was out of body half the time and didn't feel good, by the time I got on stage where I was, it was a whole new world. And then literally I had 1 hour, it's like Cinderella turning into a pumpkin, where I had to get my little butt home. Otherwise, I could barely get out of the car at the time. And nobody knew. Like I said, I had a smile on my face. I was singing, and it wasn't because I was hiding anything. I wasn't trying to be inauthentic, never have been. It was, as you know, the PTSD, the lack of understanding out there, where when you go through something like that, it is easier to deal with where you're at and get the treatments you need, and not worry about trying to explain something to somebody, where
Mm.
there's this lack of understanding out there in the medical community, as well as, and more importantly, those closest to us. That was one of the hardest pieces. So I'd show up and do my thing. Nobody would know because the show must go on. And it was an amazing experience for everyone. And then it would be like a horror film again, and it's all starting again. So nobody knew what was going on behind closed doors. It's like the story behind the music, right? The story behind the story.
Yes. And I know that you once said to me that you can really relate to Shania Twain because she's come forward with a little bit about her journey with Lyme disease, but being feeling so dizzy on stage and almost having blackouts and all of that. But I mean, when you're in that world, yes, you've committed your schedule a year in advance. And so you have to really get out there and do as best as you can. And then people don't understand what that looks like behind the scenes. It's a lot. And I'm actually grateful to you that you were able to get up there and do it. Sometimes I think, in my own experience, if I wasn't pushed some days where, like you said, I had to get to that game for my kid or do whatever it was that I really held important in my life. If I didn't have to do that, I don't know that I would have this idea of and this hope for just keeping going, putting one foot in front of the other and showing up, just show up anyway, as best you can. So before we get into what your book talks about in your 9 principles, I want to just bring up the topic of toxic positivity because, I want to really address it. And there are some people that, are listening to this from their bed and can't, like you said, see the forest for the trees. And I don't want it to come across as, just believe it will be and it will happen, even though that is so true on so many levels. What's your opinion about that new label of toxic positivity?
Sure. I mean, I think it has many labels. We can also call it, spiritual bypassing, whatever the name is. Again, I've never been big on, um, you know, putting things or people in a box because we know from our journey now that there's so much more than what we see, right? And that's really not fair. We judge ourselves so much, and hence why we judge each other, which is a shame, especially in this day and age. It can become extremely disheartening, and especially since I know what it's like to spend my days in bed. I knew what it's like. I'm glad that right now it's different for sure. Although even reading your story, every once in a while, we're not without what you call an episode, I call a flare up, that it comes out of nowhere and you're just going, oh my goodness. I just had a grieving session because I have been feeling so much better over the last 2 years, haven't felt this way in so long. And a part of me was grieving the old part of me, not that I'm longing for the old part of me, but I was grieving going, oh my God,
Mm.
how did I make it so far? Now, of course, I know this and I've written about this and I have some of these tools that I speak about so people can start to implement this in their day-to-day lives. You need the fix right now, right? Now, unfortunately, we live in an instant gratification society, which I don't necessarily believe in. It's practice, it's over time. It works, and it's actually a lot simpler than we make it. It's just that we are in our own way. And when we're not well, it makes it worse. It's like when you've got, which is what happened with my flare up, 72 hours of pain that's excruciating. And when you're a high pain tolerance kind of gal, right? Because you've been there before, you've got more tools, you're doing well. But you know what? It doesn't matter how many even tools you have. When you get a flare up that comes up and you used to deal with that 24/7, you go, oh my God, I needed the contrast. I didn't have the contrast long enough, right? To even
Right.
understand what good feels like. And again, even in that understanding, we know people always ask us, well, are you cured? We wish it worked that way. That's not the way it works. So we'd love to be able to give them or anybody a solid answer. We can't even give that to ourselves, hence the fear. And it is extremely terrifying when that comes back up, because we have to then in our strong mindset go, it's not like before. Well, how do we know? When we have those relapses, right? When we take the antibiotics or we're healing ourselves or we're doing every aspect that we can from either how do we say, the regular medical, road, or we're taking, outside the box therapies, which many of us have had to do. I had no choice. I love, I'm grateful for Western medicine. We need it. But from my journey, it didn't help me, right? I was an anomaly to all the doctors. I went in and out of doctor after doctor. How many times I walked out with just tears? Nobody was listening. It was all in my head. Somehow I must have been making it up. Oh, well, the tests show different. The false negatives. Okay, similar stories to so many that you've heard. So, spiritual bypassing, I'm not big on. Again, it's about really accepting our own humanness. My favorite quote, and I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but is life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning how to dance in the rain. Vivian Green.
I love that. I love
And I
that.
say that because that's been my life, right? Here's the thing. What I think holds us back the most is that when we're in the storm, right? The eye of the storm, whether that be from an illness or even from COVID, whether you've lost your job, whether you've lost a loved one. I mean, so many people prior to COVID didn't really have an idea of what they've experienced over the last 2 years. If they weren't suffering before, there's so many that are suffering now. And we talk about the physical ailments, we talk about the disease and what that, how that affects us, but we don't always talk about how that affects our mind, how that affects us emotionally. And just to say, hey, be positive and get over it is not the answer. We see that a lot in the New Age community. Again, I know that they're coming from a place that they know best, which is what I truly believe in their heart of all hearts, the best that they know how to support. But from somebody who's been where you've been or where I've been, it's like another dagger to the heart.
Yeah, I mean, it can be for sure. It's really hard to hear the gaslighting of, you brought this on yourself, or how did you manifest this into your life? And I mean, you can go down a whole other tricky road, and that's not what you're all about. And so before we talk about the 9 principles here, I want to just acknowledge that for my own journey, things really started shifting the moment I stopped trying to chase the lab work, try to kill the bug inside of me, and try to focus on my numbers. It really, really shifted when I realized, how important shifting my mindset was. And that was when I actually started my path to recovery. So let's talk about the 9 principles you have. First of all, which is what I just brought up, shifting your perspective. I do a little 5-minute on my Instagram reels. I have a 5-minute, change your mindset exercise that anybody can do. It's free, and it's really helpful in those times of struggle. And it's literally 5 minutes of a visualization that you can take yourself on. What is your approach?
Well, I have many. If you were to ask me what I feel like is the most important one, I would say my morning routine, period, hands down. Now, again, we've heard it before. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but just because we have an awareness of something doesn't mean that we're fully embodying it. So like you stated, your journey, the same thing. When did I really start to heal? That was exactly 2 years ago when I thought I'd missed the boat, went through yet another tower moment with another relationship breakup, and went, oh my goodness, I have been giving away my power this whole time. So it's hard to hear that when you're not well. There's so many, we take on the form of victim. Everybody does it. This is not a blame. This is pretty much the human condition, right? The sense of a longing for a belonging, right? Again, how we grew up, a lot of things we're not even aware of, that we're not purposely doing, that's subconscious. So once you realize that, oh my God, I'm actually going to take responsibility. Most of us don't, because we're afraid that once we take responsibility, everything will change. Yes. Part of us is excited about it because we know we don't want to be sick anymore. And part of us is like, but that means everything will change. Like, I don't know if I can lose any more. I'm losing every part of who it is I thought I was. But really, we are just breaking down the ego. We are breaking down what really isn't the real us. Where's your authentic self, again, beneath the rubble of who you thought you were or how you thought you were supposed to serve? And where is the actual meaning behind your unbreakable spirit, which is really what it is? Allie, that you were broken in so many different ways. And even your spirit felt squashed, but your spirit is the only thing that's really remains unbroken. And if you can have this conversation and reroute yourself and go, wait a second, let's just stop. Let's take a higher perspective, shift our perspective. That is also, I have to say, hard to do when you're so unwell. The moment I started to do that, and you may have a similar story, is when I started to feel well enough to actually make that choice. Was that similar for you, where you had enough of a um, uh, clearing of the fog, and not fully, but enough to go, okay, now I can choose different, right?
Yes, for sure. For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
I hit that moment many years into my journey. Actually, I just kept bopping around from specialist to specialist, looking outside of myself for something to fix myself. And I realized it's all here within myself. And that's where I had to shift that perspective. And that goes back to what you were discussing about the things that we inherit and the beliefs and the thoughts we inherit from our, not only our parents, but our grandparents and their parents. And it's generational. I
Yep.
watched something the other day and it said, for so many years I was cutting the ham for Thanksgiving. I'd cut the ends off, and my mom did it and her mom did it and everybody did it. And that's how I prepared my ham until sometime one day my kid asked me, "Why do you do that?" And she goes, "I don't know." And she went back and talked to her people that came before her. And they said, "Oh, well, great granny's oven was too small and she had to do that just to fit the thing in the oven." And anyway, it's just these things that we inherit, we don't question, we don't understand why our parents dealt with illness the way they did, why they passed that along to us. And it is that shifting of perspective. So going kind of, I can't hit on all of your principles. Everybody's going to have
Of
to
course not.
get the book and read them. But let's move to moving through the illusion. Talk about that a little bit.
Okay, again, that really comes down to the belief aspect, is moving through what it is we think is the truth. Just because we were taught and told something doesn't make it so. And again, we're not just taught from our familial, which is generational, absolutely. And it's amazing that a lot of us actually break the generational, what you can call, if you believe in it, a curse, or you can call a generational line, where you just shifting your perspective and doing something different shifts it for not just you, the generation that is past, but also the generation moving forward. Now, again, I believe that. I can't give you a factual statement from that, but I can tell you I absolutely believe that. So moving through the illusion means saying, is this true? Is what I'm believing actually true? Taking a moment again to say, hey, we've been taught and conditioned to look outside ourselves for the answers so often, right? Do you do that? Right? Take a moment to say, when something's not right, or you're not sure whether to go left or right, do you ask a friend? Do you have a tendency to get on the phone and ask a few people? There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a judgment. It's saying, do you really need that? The strength of who we are, we have the answers within. It's just that, what have we done? I'll tell you what I did. I ignored the red flags, Allie. I didn't listen to my intuition. And when you're not well, and everybody else is questioning you, right, and you've got this PTSD going on, it is very hard to not to know which way is up, to say, wait a second, like, I knew this relationship was wrong from the get-go. I saw the red flags, but I didn't listen. Let's be honest. I see that now, because my intuition was telling me, hey, this is not a right fit. Hey, this is not going to be the best experience for you. And I'm here going, my codependent nature of, again, always wanting to serve and giving of myself, what I learned in the familial dynamic when I was younger, was giving to my detriment. What saved my life is really realizing that I could no longer give from an empty cup. I was drained and void of energy, not because of the illness, but also because of the relationships, what I had created subconsciously, because of what I thought and learned love was, what was taught, not what I believe in or what I really long for and what I know is actually possible and what it is I deserve. So moving through the illusion is really just questioning, again, looking within and really saying, hey, let's ask ourselves the questions so we can understand what we did develop, what we did learn, and does it serve us anymore? Is it actually serving us in our adulthood? And if the answer is no, then now we have the awareness. Then we have to start to do some things on a daily basis. That is something that allows us to make the actual changes and live the life that we say we want. It does not happen overnight, but I have actually come up with a system in the way that I have taught and even blown myself away. And it's not even me, meaning I feel like I'm here to be of service. It comes through me. This is not of me.
Right.
So even my spiritual conditioning has gotten so much stronger. I'm sure you've been in moments where you were on the floor in tears, questioning it and angry at God. Why, God? Why?
Of
And
course.
it's not a victim stance. It's saying, I'm not actually surviving. People talk about surviving. No, Allie, what I've been through, what you've been through, I can't speak for you, but I know the journey is it wasn't surviving, it was merely existing. There
Mm.
was a moment where I thought it doesn't make sense to be here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's from a strong type A personality, which is very rare to get. And it wasn't from the emotional. It was like, no, this really doesn't make any sense if I'm not, I can't even, I'm done. Right.
And if your doctors, if you are come from the belief system of, your doctors having all the answers and you're sitting there waiting for them to give you an answer and they're denying your reality, then it is a deadly combination, because you start doubting yourself, and that's not a position of power or a place that you can heal from. So
No.
talking a lot about, you talk about in your 9 principles, embracing your vulnerability. And because it's like you said, it's one thing to think this and to acknowledge it and to realize, okay, might not have the best mindset for healing. It's another thing to be vulnerable to that and then move into the power position. So you first have to get to that point, warriors, where you're at rock bottom and you're vulnerable and you're sad about it and you're grieving the old you that really wanted to find the answers. And then you're going to shift that into a power position. So talk about that shift.
Sure. Well, you just made a big statement, which I think is important that most people hear. And we may have heard it 100 times, but we have to, because it's maybe that 105th time, or maybe it's the second time. Everybody's here and they have their own journey. But you just said you have to hit rock bottom. And I agree. And it doesn't matter if it's, like I said, an illness or something else you're dealing with. You'll notice that whether or not it's an illness or not, again, I deal with people in crisis, people who are at a crossroads, people who in some way, shape, or form are in a transition in their life, and they're not sure where to go anymore. They're questioning themselves. They're in the same position, right? So you have to get to that point where you can't continue doing any things the way that you're doing them anymore, irrelevant, whatever that looks like. And then you're right, you have to say, now what? And you have to shift. When we talk about embracing our vulnerability, I can only speak from my experience. It was about, again, starting with my mindset on what I was taught, that being vulnerable is a weakness. Aren't we all taught that for the most part? Even from a business perspective, you see that in the actual corporate structure where we're not using that to our advantage. How do we relate to people? How do we connect? We connect through our vulnerability. You and I are here in this conversation of feeling comfortable because you and I have a journey that is different, although so similar that even without words, you and I can go, I get you, I see you, I feel you. And as you express your story and someone goes, oh my God, I had no idea Allie was there, or wow, that's exactly what I experienced. You find what? Community, which is what you're creating for people. You feel, oh my God, I'm not alone, which is what each and every one of us needs to know. And then you go, okay, vulnerability. I have to be okay with maybe taking everything that I held in for so long because I couldn't talk about it. Because when you say, hey, I have Lyme, people go, oh, okay. And they dismiss you like all you need to do is take 2 weeks of doxycycline and you're okay. No, this is chronic Lyme. This is real. This is how many years, year after year, this has affected your whole body, your whole system, your whole life. Okay, Dr. Cameron, again, one of the doctors who inspired me, Dr. Rawls, who you had on your show. I am so just happy to be here because it was because of their research, their writings, a lot of which I even acknowledge in my story in the first section of the book, is why I'm here today to go, oh my goodness, I'm not alone. Oh my goodness, you mean Dr. Cameron says that Lyme is the infectious disease related to cancer? So if you and I were to say, and again, I know this is taboo, we have to speak about it though. And I hey, you're dealing with cancer. There's nothing left to say. Everybody gets it. But you say you're dealing with Lyme and people just chalk it off like, oh, you're fine, no big deal. We're not here to get attention. That's where the PTSD comes from with a lot of your audience and the chronic Lyme patients, right? Is I'm alone, I can't speak about this. The people closest to me, called me a hypochondriac. That's what happened to me. You've got to be kidding me. I'm bleeding on the floor, gut wrenching. My heart is just, I don't know how to pick myself back up. And it's little by little. It's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. It's choosing in the moment. So for me, I break it down to moment. It's not day to day anymore. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter if you're successful or you're on the other side, like I know that I am now. I still go through things and I have to check myself and go, okay, so I'm not as hard on myself as I once was. How many of you are hard on yourselves and you don't realize you're beating the hell out of yourself, right? And you're not willing to tell anybody that you're vulnerable or you feel this way because you're used to being let down, right? You have some type of something that has shown you in your childhood that says, hey, nobody meets me, which was mine. My belief was that nobody's actually there for me because that's kind of what I attracted. And the more I believed that, more I attracted that, right? So it's really starting off, like you're saying, is, okay, how do we embrace our vulnerability by being authentic and being okay with where we're at? We have to stop judging ourselves first. We have to say, hey, we got to discern. People are doing the best they can. For example, I was very, very angry, Allie. Aside from Lyme rage, which is real, okay, which is hard for people to see. And I was angry at everybody because they didn't understand what I was going through. And now I look at it, thank God, but it took me years to do this. It took me years to just realize, hey, people do love you. They just haven't been there. And if they have not been there, they cannot, for the life of them, understand what you're going through. And like the doctors, we're grateful. We have a system for a reason. In emergency situations, it works. They're always finding something new every day. But we have to say, hey, my intuition says this. And irrelevant of what the doctor says from the gaslighting perspective, and irrelevant of what your sister or whatever says, you have to say, okay, this is where we heal. We start to say, I am strong. I don't need to listen to them. My intuition is telling me I'm right. Oh no, I'm right. And then we start to see the validation. The right doctors show up, the right people. And I'm getting my full, what I call angel months. And I know that this is a different conversation I've had in different podcasts. And so thank you for bearing with me because we're kind of, shifting into different avenues and yet coming back to the same thing is that it's not one thing. Like you said, it's holistic, it's multifaceted. And if we can just start with one thing, like for me, the morning routine, you get up a little earlier. That might not be easy. It's not about when you get up, it's about how you get up. And you start doing something different. You don't look at your emails, okay? You start to say, hey, whether you believe in God, whether you don't, whatever it is, I just say, try to believe in something greater than yourself, okay? Whatever that is. That's the first starting point. To realize you're not alone, find the community, and then you can start taking the steps that you need to healing when you realize that so many other people are suffering too. What has helped them? First and foremost, the way you start your day, for me, is changed my life. What am I intending? What am I praying for? What am I asking? And is it from the correct space of that, what is possible, not, oh my God, here I go again. And again, I speak differently to you than I normally would to other podcasts and other people I work with, because when we are sick, I want to make sure that people understand that we are not negating their pain, that we understand that they're in pain, which does make it difficult. I can't say that it's easy when you're in this space, but it's absolutely possible. Little by little, step at a time, and being gentle with yourself. Okay, today's not a good day, or hey, I need to take a nap right now. Okay. And making sure that you're reclaiming your power by what, when we talk about the codependency, what do we have to start to do to embrace our vulnerability? Hey, you know what? I can't talk right now. We start to not be people pleasers. We start to choose us first. So it's choice daily, moment to moment, and I choose me. And that is scary as hell, because most of us that have been where we've been are used to being what? You're a mother, you have a husband, you care for others. This is your preset. And we have to reset that completely, where you actually give yourself the love and the affection and the care that you give to others, which is what I haven't and I wasn't doing until I started to say, no more. I have to choose me. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. But for me, every aspect of what I teach is about leaning into the uncomfortable. Because here's what I do know, and what I absolutely know 100%. When you lean into the uncomfortable, it's excruciating at times, sometimes better than others. But when you lean into it and you can ask, how does this serve me? Like, what do I have to learn from this? And instead of saying why, which again, that's what I had done and I've done. And every once in a while, I'm like, okay, I don't know what that was, but that doesn't serve us. Let's check yourself and let's move on. Okay, what is this here to serve me? How can I shift my perspective, like you said, and go, wait a second. The storm doesn't have to be over. I'm just going to learn how to dance with it. Now that I have a few tools in my bag and I can start my morning off right, which sets the tone for the whole day, that's already one thing. If I'm sitting here and I'm having what we call from trauma, and also when your body is used to having the switch on, where your body's in a fight or flight, we all have different symptoms. When you get used to knowing what your body does and how, you know how gifted we are, that we are so sensitive, that we've been on this journey, that we can actually tell you what we're feeling when we're feeling it because of where we've been. I wouldn't trade this journey for the world now. And yet I wouldn't wish it upon anybody. But I know this happened. I believe my soul chose this journey. I believe it because here I am inspiring others, teaching others, having lives change. Because God, the universe, okay, my belief, I shifted enough to change, to reclaim my power and say, I am no longer a victim. Once you decide and you make that change, you can never go back, which is great. But every once in a while difficult because again, I would say 95% of the population is stuck in that, whether they're sick or not, from a mental perspective that holds them back from the very things that they say that they want. So all the principles are imperative and they work together. So it's simultaneously shift your perspective, move through the illusion, question with the awareness first, then start to embodying it by embracing your vulnerability, by being gentle with yourself, by giving yourself the love and the compassion that you've given so freely to others. And when you do that, your life changes. Because one, where does our pain and most of our pain stem from? When we're talking emotional first, which does turn into the physical. And we also know from having the physical tick bite and everything that we've been through, it does actually turn into the emotional. So it goes both ways. It's not one or the other here, okay? It's not just, hey, shift your mindset and everything will be okay. It's, I believe, 90% of it, absolutely. But you've got to do all the other rest of it as well, right? And it's saying, hey, once we decide that we're no longer going to be on the fourth floor crying and being a victim, then we get to go, okay, what's next? So it's a multifaceted, avenue here. And again, I'm just trying to be mindful the way I'm speaking for your audience in particular, because I just know how it's felt and how it did feel when people were discounting your feelings. And when you grew up that way also, and with parents who didn't realize they grew up that way and didn't realize they were also, again, I hate to use these words, gaslighting and stuff. They knew no better. It wasn't their intention. What now? I love my family. I have the best relationship I've ever had with them, because guess what? I let them off the hook. I stopped being angry, which is a big reason why I was so sick and affected my liver so much. The anger that I had. And I'm stopping, like right now, I no longer look to them or my sisters or my loved ones for the validation that I once sought out. And that's really at the root of it, which I believe is what you were saying earlier.
Yes, that's a huge, 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 huge one for all of us, is to actually understand and accept and surrender to the fact that not everybody is going to understand us and the language that we're using and the physical impairments that we have on a day-to-day basis. And what really helped me with that was I have books on my website about boundaries, and your book will be there as well. But I didn't know how to create a boundary and say, oh, I can't go to the dinner party this weekend, or I can't actually volunteer at the school as much as I used to, or I can't host every single holiday function at our home. Somebody else may need to do it this year, things like that. And even though they're little, I just had to relearn that the 5 people in my nuclear family, which was myself, my husband, and my 3 kids, was what my inner circle was. It was not everybody else. And I had to shift that mindset. Those other people that are super important in my life, I could only just whittle it down to my 5 people for a couple of years. And I just did that, and I just stuck to it. And it was uncomfortable to me to say no and to have the boundaries. But that is one other thing where I just started, you talk about it, where you start making the shift. And it's a mental shift. I'm not saying it's all going to be because of this. I was still doing my treatments and my treatment plans, but I gave myself permission to be positive and optimistic and to not talk about it in front of everybody all the time. That's another thing.
And you
I mean,
needed to do
you and
that.
I could really talk for another hour
I
solid
know.
about all of this, but I want people to understand that your book and your song, which I'm so excited I'm going to play at the end of this conversation, but it's about keeping going. It's the road back to yourself.
Thank
It's
you.
the road home, and it's understanding that we have ourselves to clutch onto at the end of the day. I mean, even our most loved spouses, and it's just not the same as really holding yourself tight and really believing in yourself and coming back to that belief after being dismissed for so long. So I'd like to tell everybody where to find you. You can first start out by going to adenasampson.com. She's all over Instagram, Facebook, the Meta, whatever, everywhere else. And she's at the at Adena Sampson. And she has a Courage to Thrive community, which is at facebook.com/groups /courage to thrive. And her book, once again, is called The Road Back to Me, 9 Principles for Navigating Life's Twists and Turns. And it would be a great holiday gift or birthday gift to anybody, or even any teenager going through issues. It doesn't have to only be limited to Lyme disease. And I'd like to sort of finish this by playing your beautiful, beautiful and inspirational song. I mean, it's going on my playlist for when I do treatments for sure. And I think it will be added to everybody else's playlist. But in closing, I'd like to hear your final words to any of our warriors out there.
Sure. One, thank you so much. Again, this was really, again, everything was channeled through me. This was meant to be. And I'm no longer driving my own ship, which is the way we're taught and told. And the way I grew up with it, and also the way we're taught in any type of business and whatnot, is set goals. There's nothing wrong with setting goals. However, I really believe that things are meant to be. And when they're meant to be, and you realize that it's a co-creation with spirit, it's a co-creation with the universe, with God, whatever your beliefs are. When you can realize that it's time to say, okay, I'm going to reclaim my power by trying to give me, myself, and I the love again that I've given so freely. That's really where we need to start. There's so much more that can be said, but again, there's only so much time. And the road back to me, and even the music that we just discussed, that thank you so much for sharing. I have a couple other songs actually that go along with the book for my readers in the beginning half of the book, so they can see not just the song on the way out and hey, I'm on the road back to me, but where I was when I was in it, the pain inside and what that's like. Again, for anybody, again, a big part of my audience is anywhere from 30 to 65. Of course, we deal with those that are younger as well, because we have a lot of older souls now starting off on their journey. And when you talk about the warrior spirit, I call it the unbreakable spirit, because that's exactly what it is. I'm here to just say, please keep going. It's irrelevant. Life is not based on our identity, who we are. Our value is not based on our circumstances. We are not the sum of our circumstances. However, I do believe that we truly are, like Dr. Lipton says, the sum of our beliefs. And that is a big reason why I am here today. I know Allie can attest to that. So thank you so much again for just bringing me on here, allowing me to bring, if anything, just my presence with you, the energy of your group and your audience. You guys are not alone. I know easier said than done. My best thing when I get in these funks, I say to myself, it's not forever, it's just for now. It's not forever, it's just for now. It's not forever, it's just for now. Even though for us, now has felt like what? Days that turn into weeks, that turn into months, right? And yet here I am. It's not forever. It's just for now. And you've got the grit. You have so much. I want to let you guys know that actually you are the inspiration, that people look to you because of where you're at and they see how strong you are, even if it's not expressed. I want you to know that that's the truth. And I just want to thank you for being yourself. And at some point, I hope that we get to hear your journey, because I will tell you, Allie, in closing, that if it wasn't until I realized, like, I didn't say, oh, I'm going to write this book. That's not what happened, Allie. I got the call. I was told to do a few things I won't go into right now. And as I followed up on that, I knew the book was coming and that's what was happening. And then I went, oh my God, I have to embrace my vulnerability. It takes a lot of what? Courage, the courage to thrive, to tell my story now after you and I, nobody speaks about it because it's easier, because we have to heal and we have to go within and isolate first, to get this out, to say, oh my God, it wasn't until the book showed up on my doorstep that I went, oh boy, I just shared my story, and not just my story, but my in-depth, heart-to-heart, like story of where I've been and my awarenesses, and how I was sick, and how I'm here. And oh my goodness, it's out there. You know, you don't even realize you're doing it. And then I have to tell you that this in itself has actually been where I've healed the most, is because I was able to say, you're not alone. And I don't want anybody to suffer in any way, shape, or form like I did. And I know that's why you and I and everybody that you bring on are here, is that we don't want you to suffer. We've been there. We're still on the journey, irrelevant of what that looks like. We're here with you. And please don't give up. Just stay the course. And the silver lining is there. Even if the clouds are in the sky, they do not last, right? The clouds part, and you'll get that ray of hope, and you will see why you're here and how you're here to serve. So thank you so, so, so much.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. You're just such an inspiration, and such a breath of fresh air to so many that are feeling hopeless. Please run out and buy the book. I believe in this book. I believe in her principles here, and I think it can make a shift in everyone. And without further ado, here is her song, "The Road Back to Me."
They told me I was a failure, said you'll never succeed. Fool for believing, lost my will to achieve. Broken down and tired, how can this be? Not sure where to start on the road back to me. Still searching for the answers, also it seems, picking up the pieces of my shattered dreams, putting together the puzzle of who I'm meant to be, yeah. One step at a time on the road back to me. It's time to move forward and leave the past behind. Open up my heart and clear my mind, expanding my horizons, looking deep inside, paint a new picture I can no longer hide, breaking the chains that bind me, my spirit set free, far and wide on the I'm on the road back, road back to me. I'm on the road back, road back to me. I'm on the road back, road back to me. I'm on the road, oh, I'm on the way back home. Oh yeah, I'm on the road back to me.